All right, so we're going to get started. Greetings, everyone. Nice to see all of you. Now, one practice that's nice to do when we meet as a group, and when you meet as a group, is to begin with some kind of a centering practice or some kind of meditation. You could take a few moments of silence or do something else. I might choose to sing a song right now. And Maria, I'll have you share a screen, the simple gifts. I was thinking of a song that might go with the Midah of humility. And so this is a good one. It's an old Quaker song, and you might have heard it. I expect you have. And so you can mute yourself and sing along. We'll just do this for a minute.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's mute.
'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we will not be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. Thank you, Maria. So, welcome everyone, and this is the first session of our Coastside Mussar practice class. Now, there will be 4 of these classes, and we'll be dealing with 2 midot. And midot is the plural form of the word midah, which means trait, or soul trait, or quality, or characteristic. So you'll find, and we'll deal with a list of them. The first 2 that we'll be dealing with are humility and simplicity. So tonight and next week, we'll deal with the midah of humility, and following the 2 weeks following that, we'll deal with simplicity. Now, it's kind of random or arbitrary as to which midah you choose to study. It's really up to you. In many cases, humility is the first one that's studied. So we'll follow that practice, and then you'll get to choose whatever midot you'd like to focus on with your group. A couple of other practices. Sorry, I'm still getting over that cough. There will be other practices such as working with a chavruta group. Chavruta means partner study. It's an Aramaic word, actually. And so the group would actually be called chevra, or in Hebrew, since Aramaic is very similar to Hebrew, it's chavura, which you've heard. And the word for partner is chaver, or friend.
I always wondered what the difference was between a chavruta and a chavara. So thank you for clarifying that.
And I've never been entirely sure about, whether you say my chavruta as a group or my chavruta partner. I'm not entirely sure, but you get the point. You can find what works for you. You might hear some people say chavrusa or chavrusa, because that's the Ashkenazi pronunciation, just like they say Shabbos instead of Shabbat. So we opened with a song, or sometimes I recommend a prayer or meditation. That's a good way to start your meetings. And then you'll talk about the midah. So let's talk about humility. I sent an article, or actually a list of articles to read. Being humble and honest about it, who actually read some of them? Great. Okay. The good news is you've got 2 weeks to work with this, so you've got some time. It is helpful. Next week, we'll meet at this time, but the time we'll spend will mostly be with your chavruta partners. So we'll meet, but this is a chance, to ask questions, to get used to the rhythm of working with your partners, to get to know each other. But if you have some questions, we'll be here together so that we'll have some time as a group all together to talk and answer questions. But the point is, over the next 4 weeks, this is like your training wheels. You've only got 4 weeks to really figure out how it works working with a partner and getting yourself onto a routine. And then from that point on, you're on your own. Now, in the 5th week, we will reconvene, which is completely optional for you, but it's also optional for all the other people who have studied Mussar in any of my previous cohorts. So, and then we'll do random breakout rooms. So that way, if you come, not only will we talk about a midah, but then you'll get to meet some of the other practitioners aside from the people in your group. And that's really important because you might get to know the people in your group and you fall into the same patterns and you talk about the same things. So it's really nice to, change it up a little bit and talk with somebody else. Now we have a few experienced Mussar practitioners here. I'm going to call you out. We've got Laura. She was probably with me from the very beginning, which was like a year and a half ago, at least a year ago. And you maybe studied it before then too. Wendy, you've been doing Mussar probably about the same amount of time. You've got your own group up at there in Bishop, right?
Yeah, we've got a Hevruta of 11 of us.
Wow. But wait, you don't all meet each time, do you?
We do.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't do the small group thing.
Interesting. Okay, well, we can talk about the advantages and disadvantages of that. But you must have a good group dynamic, so you're able to, everyone gets to speak. Huh?
Amazing group. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good to hear. Sandy, you've been a Mussar practitioner. You've been with me for probably at least a year, right?
And Gimel.
Wow.
It's more than a year.
Very beginning. And you've been working with your own group. You've had 1 or 2 groups. And I think you've had a really good experience, not only with your groups, but with your own individual practice. Would you say?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Still working.
Yeah. Aren't we all? But I recall that you've been able to use many situations in the community where you live to practice Mussar, and all the people you interact with and all the patience you need to have, right?
Definitely. Yes.
Terrific. Carlos has been with me maybe since Kita Aleph, since the first cohort, and also Sammy and Katie. Sammy is Laura's son. Let's talk about the materials. So I included about 5, maybe 6 different readings. It's a lot. 2 of them were optional. 2 of them were actually scientific papers. So you can read them or not. Now, what's really interesting and unique about Coastside Mussar is in just about every other Mussar group, you're going to be studying Jewish texts. What I'm providing here is a variety. And I'll tell you one thing, and then we'll move on. I tend to find, in my experience with Jewish study and practice, is there are a few basic assumptions. One is something is true, or it's, it carries more weight if someone else said it a long time ago, especially some rabbi. So if you quote someone who said it, especially if it's from the Torah or from the Talmud, and then, there's no doubt that it has more merit than anything else that could be said. I kind of disagree with that assumption, okay? Also, another assumption seems to be that all the wisdom in the world is contained in the Torah. And so anything you want to know, that's where you go. That's the source. That's a wonderful teaching, and there is a lot of wisdom in the Torah, but I think there are many other sources of wisdom. There were a couple of easier readings. One was called How Humility Will Make You... what is the rest of that title, Maria?
How Humility Will Make You the Greatest Person Ever.
Okay, there you go. Now I could have you do, go ahead and share the screen. I could have you do an assessment and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How humble are you? And that's actually a trick question. because if you rate yourself a 10, you're obviously anything but. So this is a summary of the article. I urge you to read it, but I want to make sure I get this in. When you do meet with your study partners, you want to make sure to do the readings ahead of time so that you can participate equally in the discussion. So this article says there are 3 tips for how to increase your humility or to work on that trait. The first is to embrace your humanness. Go ahead and expand that a little bit so we can just read that paragraph. For many, we all fail at something that is important to us. A job or a relationship, for example, or self-esteem plummets because we tied our self-worth to those things. All of a sudden, we become bad or unworthy people, and it can be a long road to recovery. Not so for people with humility. As stated earlier, their ability to withstand failure or criticism comes from their sense of intrinsic value of being human rather than outer means. So when they fail at a task or don't live up to expectations, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It just means that they are human, like the rest of us. Scientists suggest that this intrinsic value stems from secure attachment, or the healthy emotional bond formed with close others, usually our childhood caregivers. Having the experience of unconditional acceptance and love, particularly when you're young, can serve as a buffer against the effects of criticism or failure. Unfortunately, many of us did not experience secure attachment when we were children. One study found that a whopping 40% of adults are not securely attached. But thankfully, this does not mean we are doomed. We can heal through healthy adult relationships.
Thank you so very much.
Such as friends, romantic partners, and even with a higher power. Practice mindfulness and self-compassion. Is someone willing to read that for us?
I love reading aloud, so I'll do it.
Oh, Sam, go for it.
All right. In recent years, mindfulness and self-compassion have been linked to greater psychological resilience and emotional well-being, and I can't imagine developing humility without them. According to scientists, humble people have an accurate picture of themselves, both their faults and their gifts, which helps them to see what might need changing within. Mindfulness grows our self-awareness by giving us permission to stop and notice our thoughts and emotions without judgment. If we judge what's going on inside us, we paint a distorted view of ourselves. The more we become aware of our inner lives, the easier it is to see where unhealthy beliefs and actions might be limiting us. Noticing and then accepting those parts of ourselves that are wreaking havoc and that require us to change calls for self-compassion or treating oneself with kindness and understanding. Once we accept what needs changing, then we can start the process of transformation. I love the saying by a wise sage, if you are in a dark room, don't beat the darkness with a stick. Rather, turn on the light. In other words, just gently and patiently replace a negative thought or action with a positive one, and over time, we may not even recognize the person we once were.
Thank you. Awesome. That's, I think we all know something about mindfulness. Okay, how about a volunteer to read the 3rd section? Yeah, Wendy?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thanks.
Express gratitude. Saying thank you means that we recognize the gifts that come into our lives and, as a result, acknowledge the value of other people. Very simply, gratitude can make us less self-focused and more focused on those around us, a hallmark of humble people. Indeed, a recent study found that gratitude and humility are mutually reinforcing. Expressing gratitude can induce humility in us, and humble people have a greater capacity for conveying gratitude. Both gratitude letters and gratitude diaries were used in this study. Easy to perform practices that are described in greater detail at Greater Good in Action website. Perhaps nothing like plugging yourself in an article about humility.
Great. Now I'm going to send you into breakout rooms, and we'll have about 20 minutes. I want you to spend just a few minutes getting acquainted. You may already know each other, so you can just, chat for a couple of minutes, but then I want you to talk about the article. Before we do that, though, are there any tips from our experienced Mussar practitioners about what makes for a successful conversation or discussion? Wendy, you have a lot of experience. What tips do you have?
Well, I mean, in our group, we practice humility at every meeting by, making sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. So, and by being conscious of our own amount of space that we're taking up in the room. So
Great. There should be some experienced practitioners in each group. And so I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms, and we've got 20 minutes, and we'll see you back then. All right. Dveikut means clinging to God, which means that there's no ego. You're just so attached to the divine that your ego just is minimal. Now, the ego is generally a good thing. We all need to have a healthy ego if we're going to function. But there are either people who are able to allow their ego to just is very transparent, translucent is a good word for it. Or, when they go deeply into meditation or have a deep spiritual experience, it vanishes for temporary periods of time. And then there are some whose ego is completely gone. Now, I've studied, a lot of saints and sages in the East, and there are people like that, who it's like you think of a fan, an electric fan that's on. When you pull the plug, the blade is still spinning around, but there's nothing that's keeping it going. And so that's in Eastern religions. It's like you're letting your karma play out. But there's no attachment to it that's creating more karma. Anyway, a much longer discussion could be had. But the text I included was a Hasidic text. It's a text by a Rebbe who uses two images about this process of annihilating the ego. The term for that in Hebrew is bitul hayesh. So one image he uses is like a drop of water that drops into the sea. Imagine that your sense of self, your ego could dissolve into something that's so much larger than yourself. Or another image was that you were like the branch on a tree, which is one and the same with the tree itself. It derives its nourishment from the tree. And so it's just connected to something larger than itself. So I was so inspired by this passage, and Maria, don't worry about sharing the text, but I might have you share the clip of the music. I wrote a song about it called Boundless. And I quoted exactly the Hebrew text that you'll see associated with this. And so part of it's in Hebrew and part of it's in English. There you go. You get the gist of it. I was hoping that that might be something like a meditation. So that's all there for you. I want to go back into breakout rooms for just about 10 more minutes, just for a short time, just for you, so you can talk with one another and process everything. And and think of how you'll proceed from here. So I'm going to go back to, does anyone have any questions or comments right now before we do that?
Yeah. Is our breakout room our Savruta?
Yes, for now.
Got it. Okay.
And then you can be in touch with me, and if it's not working out, then we can switch things around. Okay. Here we go. We got about 8 minutes. All right, ready, go. Well, listen, folks, we're going to wrap up now so that I can respect the time that I told you it would be, and I respect your time. But I hope you feel enough guidance and enough structure to feel confident going forward. I'm a little unsure myself. Prior to this in the other cohorts, we used a book a lot more. So we're kind of on our own, but maybe there's something good about that. We'll see. Please be in touch. I'll send a follow-up email. Please feel free to email me back if you have any feedback, comments, questions, and do as much of the readings as you can. And join us next week, same time, same link. All right.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye.
Right.
Rabbi, good night.
Much.